So, Core 4 of the Thousand Year Blood War arc anime is coming 2026, which means we've got plenty of time to ponder how exactly they're going to wrap things up, what's going to change, what's going to be added, and so forth. Over the course of the previous 3 cores, the anime version of the Thousand Year Blood War arc has already done a great job of expanding upon the original story, and filling in some of the gaps to help tighten up the overall plot, which in many ways was the weakest element of the original manga version. But that doesn't mean that we are free and clear just yet. The final core of the anime still has some serious work to do in answering a number of questions surrounding the final arc's most enigmatic elements. The Soul King himself, Adnias, his son, Yhwach, and really, just about everything surrounding the two of them. These two massively important characters, one of whom is the catalyst for the entire arc and the main villain of the series, are still a huge mystery today, and I have 9 unanswered questions regarding them that need to be answered before the end. Questions that were both left hanging in the manga, and questions that have been newly stirred up thanks to the anime expanding on things. So, let's take a look at these 9 unanswered questions, discuss them, discuss possible answers, and gauge just how likely it is that Core 4 will deliver on each of them. Of course, before we get started on today's video, there will be spoilers for the remainder of the Thousand Year Blood War arc anime still to come, and if you enjoyed today's video, then consider hitting subscribe down below. Maybe you're new here, maybe you just haven't hit that button yet. Either way, your support would be greatly appreciated, and it all goes a very long way, so thank you all so very much. And of course, make sure to let me know down in the comments as well if there are any questions pertaining to the Soul King, to Yhwach, to any of the characters in their orbit, that you think I missed here, that you think were worthy of being included on this list, that you think are some of the absolute biggest unanswered questions that still need to be addressed in the Thousand Year Blood War arc Core 4, then do please let me know down in the comments. So, first up, like I said, these are some of the biggest questions surrounding the Soul King and his son, Yhwach, and characters in their orbit, which ideally do need to be answered in Core 4 of the anime. Which means there's probably only 13, maybe 14 at a push episodes to get all of this done and answered. Is it doable? I think so, I'm not sure really, but here we go anyway. First up, how was the Soul King sealed? Of course, Can't Fear Your Own World has a version of those events that took place potentially a million years prior to the main story, but something doesn't add up with what we've been shown in the anime so far. The anime has given us the briefest of snippets into Adnias' backstory, showing him wielding an unusual ceremonial sword, plunging it into the primordial sea before turning it like a key, using it to split that original world into the 3 that we know today. Then, perhaps most peculiarly, as witnessed by Ichigo on Irazu Sando, the Soul King kind of just fell apart. Still clutching the sword, Adnias' body crumbled before Ichigo's very eyes, his limbs separating from his torso like a statue degrading over time. His now limbless body was then collected from the water by a very sinister Ichibei. We need to know exactly what happened here. What is this ceremonial blade Adnias is using? Is that connected to why his body broke down? When was his torso placed inside the crystal prison? And was it Ichibei who did that, after seemingly scooping him up from the water? And is there any connection here to the ancestors of the 5 noble houses? As in the Can't Fear Your Own World version of this story, they played a pivotal role. But so far it looks like the anime might be going in a different direction, which is interesting. All of these threads are connected to one overarching question: how was the Soul King sealed? And that's what we need to know. Okay, so next up, what's the deal with Yhwach being Adnias' son? Another question connected to this would be, who was Yhwach's mother? Is Yhwach literally the son of the Soul King? Or is there something else going on here? At the very start of Core 2, we glimpsed the moment of Yhwach's creation. Whether it was his literal birth or it was more of a metaphor, either way we even saw what appears to be his mother cradling him in her arms. Though the anime depicted her as some kind of celestial figure, it's impossible to know again if this was merely metaphorical, or if she really is some kind of cosmic force. Obviously, the Soul King himself is completely unlike any other being we have ever known in Bleach. The questions are boundless. So perhaps the same extends to Yhwach's mother as well, if she is even really a physical person at all. While I think I understand why Yhwach was turned into a baby when the worlds were split, as far as I'm concerned, that was the moment he was thrust into this newly created cycle of rebirth, and so had to start over effectively, and began aging normally from that point. At least that's my guess anyway. There is still so much we don't know about Yhwach's earliest days. To be honest, I'm not necessarily expecting to learn who Yhwach's mother was, or what she was, but it would be nice. However, I definitely want and expect to learn more about Yhwach's youth in general, and maybe even his time in the primordial world. Okay, this next question is actually pretty simple. When the war is over, when Yhwach is defeated by Ichigo, who is the new Soul King? Now again, this is answered in the prologue of Can't Fear Your Own World, but I want to see the anime go that extra step too. I've said it before that even if they don't animate all of the light novels, I would absolutely love for them to at least animate the Can't Fear Your Own World prologue, because it deals with that immediate aftermath of the war. Something that frankly should have been in the manga, and it answers major lore questions like, who is the new Soul King after Yhwach's death? And make no mistake, this is a huge lore question. In fact, I remember back in 2016 reading the final 2 chapters of the manga 685 and 686, and this being one of the biggest questions that was left hanging, lingering over the story. After all, the entire point of the final showdown was initially to protect the Soul King, and when they failed at that, it was then to prevent the collapse of the worlds. And Yhwach, who was the current Soul King at the time of the ending, had just been killed. Yet somehow, 10 years later, everything seemed to be carrying on just fine without him. Who had they got to replace him? It was really weird. And it was great that Can't Fear Your Own World did actually address that. So I'd love to see the anime address it before the end as well. Now, this next unanswered question feels like a bit of a deep cut. It feels like it's a bit of a niche one, perhaps. Maybe only one that I really care about, though I doubt it. Now, to be honest, it has always bugged me, both back when the manga was releasing, but also here, now in the anime, frankly even more so with the additional context we now have. And that's what happened to Yhwach after he fought Yamamoto 1,000 years ago. In the manga, all we really knew was that he and Yamamoto fought 1,000 years ago, and that Yhwach lost and was somehow sealed away. Yet Mayuri claims Yamamoto failed to kill the Quincy King. In the anime, we see Yhwach in the final moments of that first war. Sasakibei stabs him through the back, allowing Yamamoto to land a devastating strike with, presumably, his bankai, since again he mentions Yhwach having fought it once before. But what happens next? If Yhwach somehow survives that attack, which he clearly does, was he just quickly spirited away by the surviving Quincy from right under Yamamoto's nose? Don't forget, compounding things even further, the Quincy weren't hiding in the shadows just yet. That happens immediately after this, when they flee the human world and essentially leave behind the Lichtreich, transporting everything they can to the shadows of the Serete. Why did Yamamoto defeating Yhwach result in him losing his pulse, his mind, and his power, and all that is mentioned in the Kaiser Gesang. I could buy something like, since Yhwach is the son of Adnias, maybe he can't ever really be killed, but he was so badly wounded that it kind of, I don't know, reset his power right back to the way it was when he first entered the cycle of rebirth, but again, that's all speculation. We don't know any of it. We have no idea how any of it worked. If Yhwach needs people to die in order to continuously retrieve the bits of his soul that he gave to them, in order to essentially keep living, as is revealed in the chapter God Like You, how did he maintain his current form, his current sense of self, as much of a husk as it may have been, for almost 1,000 years, in a form of stasis, essentially? This has been bugging me for a long time, and I would love some closure on it. It would be great to just see a timeline of events mapped out from the moment Yhwach lost that first fight, but I don't think we'll be so lucky. Next up, while not a question about Yhwach or Adnias specifically, what's the deal with Ichibei? Ichibei may very well be the single most mysterious character in Bleach, I've got to be honest. Maybe even more so than the likes of the Soul King, because at least Ichibei is actively, well, active in the present day. We've known for a while that there is something unsettling about this guy, that there's something more to the leader of the Zero Division, and by extension the Shinigami themselves, hiding behind his hauntingly jolly expression. But just how deep does this rabbit hole actually go? Who or what is Ichibei? What was his relationship with Adnias? In the brief glimpses the anime has given us of the Soul King's fall, Ichibei is very much there, he's present, and he's seen cradling the Soul King's torso in the waters of the Primordial Sea. Or what used to be the Primordial Sea anyway, presumably, as the three worlds are being created in that moment, or maybe this shot takes place immediately after the worlds have been created now that the Soul King has fallen. Don't even get started on the fact that Ichibei appears to be wearing a Captain's Haori in this flashback. That maybe could just be an oversight, unless Ichibei finding the Soul King's torso takes place a long time, a really long time, after the three worlds have been created, which I guess is a possibility. But without the Soul King imprisoned in his crystal, without him able to act as a linchpin, wouldn't the three worlds have been at risk that entire time if he was just floating around in some water somewhere? If this shot of Ichibei is from the moment the worlds were separated, how can Ichibei be that old? What kind of a being is he? I, and I think basically everyone else, assume that Ichibei must be the progenitor of all Shinigami. But these are questions that we really need to discover the answers to. What's his role in all of this? It's clear he wants to keep the status quo no matter the cost. The status quo as was created by the Shinigami, by the way. The Shinigami have a tenuous grip on the state of the world as it stands right now, thanks to Adnias' sacrifice, and the more kind of sinister conspiracy theory is that Ichibei wants to maintain that control even at the cost of the eternal humiliation of Adnias. Did Ichibei somehow force Adnias' hand in the events that led to his downfall? How could Adnias be reasonably tricked or led into doing anything when he had the absolute power of the Almighty? Whether or not we'll learn more about this in Core 4 feels a bit up in the air, to be honest. The last time we saw Ichibei was after he had restored his body in the wake of his defeat at the hands of Yhwach, and that's the very last time we see him in the manga too. So, here's hoping he makes a reappearance in some form. And speaking of Soul King adjacent characters, is Ukitake still alive or what? Yes, Ukitake's fate has been changed somewhat dramatically from the manga, and it's left fans wondering what's really going on with the captain of the 13th Division. In the manga, after Ukitake enacts the ritual of Kamikake to try and stabilize the worlds following Ryo's death, Yhwach takes and absorbs Mimihagi from the captain, quite literally ripping the right arm off of the Soul King's crystal and from within Ukitake himself. Ukitake's dead body then collapses, and the last time we ever see him in the manga, he's being held up by Kiyone and Sentaro. The anime treats Ukitake's noble sacrifice quite differently, however. For starters, Ukitake, working through Mimihagi, fights off Yhwach for longer, attempting to keep the Quincy King at bay. And yet, once Yhwach overpowers Mimihagi, he simply destroys the hand itself. He doesn't absorb it, and more importantly, he doesn't steal it from within Ukitake. He never takes the power of the right hand for himself. This means that by the time Yhwach absorbs his father, which he does still do in the anime, Mimihagi and by extension Ukitake are technically still active. They're still alive. And we see this once Yhwach creates Varvelt, having essentially become the new Soul King. Ukitake continues to try and hold the worlds together, with Mimihagi's influence quite literally spreading across the skies of the Soul Society, the human world, and Waco Mundo like a web, like a net, until it can quite literally no longer hold back the collapse and it begins to fracture. And you might be forgiven for thinking, well, surely that's the end of it. If Mimihagi can no longer hold back the collapse of the world, then Ukitake will surely now die, and so on and so forth. Except, no, because right at the end of episode 40, almost at the very end of Core 3, one of the very final shots we see Ukitake once again, and this time a strange black ring appears behind him. Are Ukitake and Mimihagi seriously still kicking? Are they gearing up for one more valiant effort? I have absolutely no idea, but the ring imagery is curious, because both Pernida and Mimihagi were sealed before their powers could really be let loose, and Mimihagi's seal took the form of a black ring that encircled it, which it then broke out of. You can actually see it shattering the seal before it makes its way up to the palace. So, is Mimihagi supposed to be regressing, retracting itself? Is it being resealed here somehow? I really don't know, but I do think we'll find this one out. And Ukitake kind of has to die, because Rukia, of course, becomes the captain of the 13th Division in the epilogue, unless they remove that, which I highly doubt. Alright, let's move away from the Soul King for just a little bit to address a more Yhwach adjacent character instead. How did Uryu survive Yhwach's Auswählen? What makes him so special? Now, I'm feeling pretty good about this one, considering the big reveal of Uryu's true motivation was the core focus of episode 40, and that included a surprise flashback showing the day of the Auswählen that eventually robbed Katagiri of her life, including Uryu seemingly being affected by the power, which goes against everything we thought we knew, perhaps setting up some kind of twist reveal. Yeah, I'm pretty confident that we'll learn the answer to this in Core 4, and that it may even directly tie into Uryu's new plan for bringing down Varvelt, and maybe even to the destruction of Yhwach himself. In the manga, Yhwach revealed that Uryu was chosen to be his successor specifically because he survived the Auswählen all those years ago, and as a result has a power that somehow supersedes Yhwach's own, and yet it was never expanded upon. Here, though, the anime has quite clearly built Uryu's true nature into not only the more fleshed out backstory of the Ishida family, but also the future of his character as well, which is very exciting. With Uryu about to face Hashwolf in battle, well, now seems like a great time to learn more about him. And sticking with Uryu for a moment, this is a question that involves both Yhwach and the Soul King, and even Hashwolf to some degree. Does Uryu have the Almighty? Or at least a version of it anyway? This is a completely new plot thread introduced by the anime, but when Uryu defeated Senjumaru back in episode 27, his eyes briefly flashed red for a moment. And in that moment, Hashwolf seemed to sense something. There's also the shot of Uryu looking down at his fist as Bleach vein courses through him, and for a second, the reishi seems to take on the appearance of an eye, looking like the right hand of the Soul King itself. So there's definitely something going on here. The Bleach vein thing may just be a coincidence, but there's no denying Uryu's red eyes. While we know Hashwolf has a version of the Almighty, his eyes flash between colours briefly too, which again is a new addition for the anime. So it seems fairly clear to me that Uryu has a version of the Almighty, and we know that the Almighty, being a power that stems from the Soul King, essentially cancels itself out when two or more of these powers meet. It's the only thing its eyes can't perceive. Pernida's version of the Almighty, which is presumably inherently baked into it as the left arm of the Soul King, shuts down Yhwach's version of the Almighty when he absorbs the left arm from Ichibei. And Yhwach can't see the future of Mimihagi in his eyes due to it being an offshoot of Ryo, and again, like Pernida, likely possessing some form of the Almighty itself. The idea, I think, is that Ryo's power quashes all. Back when he was whole, he quite clearly possessed the ultimate form of the Almighty. In fact, even when he was reduced to his catatonic state, he could still seemingly see the far-flung future for potentially 1,000,000 years, uninterrupted up until his eventual death. And of course, this ultimate power is represented by him having 4 irises per eye. More than Yhwach's 3, more than Pernida's 2, more than anyone else. So, how exactly did Uryu get the Almighty, if indeed he did at all? Here's where things get tricky. Could it be thanks to the antithesis? Could Uryu use his shrift to reverse who has the Almighty and who doesn't? Could he potentially steal it from Hashwolf during their battle, or even from Yhwach in the finale, leaving him blind to the arrow strike from behind? When Uryu's eyes flash red in his battle against Senjumaru, could that have been him testing his limits, using the chaos surrounding them to try and cover his tracks, as maybe he briefly, very briefly, maybe even taps into Yhwach's the Almighty, which is what Hashwolf notices, and at that point realizes that yes, this is something I can do, my ultimate plan may in fact succeed. Again, I'm sure we will learn the truth of this come Core 4, as it's likely to play a huge role in the finale. And, well, since we're already talking about it, let's discuss that finale with my 9th and final question. And the final question on this list is the only one so far that hasn't been touched on at all by the anime yet. Though it absolutely will be a massive part of Core 4, and of course that's the question, how was Yhwach struck by the still silver arrow? In the manga, Yhwach can see every future, and he can rewrite them too, every possibility like grains of sand, infinite grains of sand before his very eyes, something that is made very clear to us. And by the time of the final battle, quite literally resurrects himself from death, thanks to the Almighty, revealing that he can even rewrite futures in which he's been killed. So, at this point, it seems like there's absolutely no hope for our heroes. When suddenly, out of nowhere, a silver arrow punches through the Quincy King's back as Uryu arrives on the scene. The still silver arrow, devised by Ryuken, effectively strips Yhwach of all of his powers for a few critical seconds. Enough time for Ichigo to land the killing blow on a now essentially just human Yhwach. And so is pivotal in the conclusion of the entire war and of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. But the problem is, Yhwach should have seen this coming. Even if not right in that moment, even if he was distracted by what was going on with Ichigo, he can see every single future, like unlimited, like I said, infinite grains of sand, and rewrite them. So how is this any different to every other time he has overcome something? How is this any different to him breaking Ichigo's bankai in the future? Or telling Ichigo and Renji that all bankai have been destroyed in the future? The moment the arrow left Uryu's bow, surprise or not, distraction or not, it should have been destroyed. There's no longer even Kyoka Suigetsu's illusions to fall back on here. Yhwach telling Ichigo and Renji that all bankai have been destroyed in the future is proof that he does not need to be fixated on something to be able to alter the future that it resides in. How is he destroying every single bankai when, at least as far as we've seen, he was nowhere near them? That just goes to show, to prove, that him being focused on Ichigo in that moment should not matter. The arrow should still be broken. So what's going on here? Look, I guess it's totally possible that Yhwach saw the arrow and just didn't anticipate what it was, what it could do. He never thought that his Quincy might turn on him like that. But again, he should be able to see every future. So he should have known that his powers would be robbed from him. Even if, and we're getting really into the weeds now, even if the Almighty just sort of cuts off at that moment, Yhwach would realise that. And he would think, hold on a minute, this arrow somehow makes my vision of the future stop abruptly. So presumably it is doing something that messes with the Almighty. I'd better just break this thing, even if he doesn't see what it actually does. Well, one of the prevailing theories has always been that Uryu somehow used the antithesis to strike Yhwach, though I'm not entirely sure how that would work. This scenario doesn't really seem to have anything to do with Uryu's Shrift or what it can do. What exactly is he reversing here? Well, as I mentioned a minute ago in the answer to the last question, it could be that Uryu is swapping, in that moment, who has access to the Almighty. Another theory, of course, which ties into this, is that it has something to do with Uryu's mysterious power that supersedes Yhwach's own. That same power, again, that we discussed earlier that will hopefully be expanded on. A power that may have something to do with both the Soul King and the Almighty itself. And look, if it does indeed play a role in how Uryu helps to defeat Yhwach, then undoubtedly it is hopefully going to be explained. It is hopefully going to be answered. It is likely going to be a major focus of Core 4. So like I said, those last two questions and answers, they kind of blend in. They're all kind of focused around Uryu, his power, the antithesis, its relationship to Yhwach. And I'm hoping that all comes together, that all coalesces nicely in Core 4 to provide a satisfying conclusion to all of these characters and all of these collective plot threads. Alright everyone, but that's it for today's video. As always, I do hope you enjoyed it. I hope you took something of value away from it as well. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below about these different questions, the 9 questions surrounding the Soul King, surrounding Yhwach, and surrounding several Soul King and Yhwach adjacent characters, about whom there are still some lingering and pretty major mysteries. Did I miss any? If I did, do please let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to see which questions you'd like to be answered in Core 4 as well. And here's hoping that the calamity does come through for us. I've got my fingers crossed that everything is wrapped up nicely. Alright everyone, once again, thank you so very much for watching. Remember to consider hitting subscribe down below if you haven't done already for more Bleach videos just like this. Consider checking out my other channel, Mr. Tomo Talks Games, and maybe dropping a subscribe over there, helping us to support that channel's growth. We are really zoning in on our 15,000 subscriber milestone, and again, your support in reaching that goal would be just fantastic. It really would be amazing, and I truly would appreciate it. And speaking of which, a massive thank you and an unending appreciation to all my wonderful supporters over on Patreon, whose support really does make the world of difference. Again, it means so very much to me, and frankly, I couldn't be here without you, so thank you all so very much. Alright guys, until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.